A few weeks ago, when the scriptures began to move to the end of the church year, I mentioned that if we used a visual to understand how this process is working, that it's about time, but not marked as we normally think of time on a continuum, like point A to point B to point C on a straight line. But rather, the scriptures are calling us or inviting us to reflect upon sacred time. And sacred time isn't linear, but is cyclical or circular, if you will. And so I suggested that if we had a slinky, we might better understand what the idea was. So on the one hand, if you look at the slinky, like looking down on it, it just looks like a continuous circle. And I found out the other day that if you do this, that by the way, if you let go of the top, that the bottom doesn't know that you've let go of the top, but the bottom will stay there until the top catches up with it and then it drops. Anyway, that's just a crazy little fact that I heard on the news story the other day on the Science Channel. But so sacred time is, and I wish it would be straight, but sometimes I guess it kind of lags in the idea. So if you were to look at it this way, you would see that time moves around kind of in a circle, but always moving forward, if you will. And that's one of the important ideas about sacred time, is that it's always moving forward. So I thought of this song, and those over 50 will know what I'm talking about. Under 50, you won't get it. But it's a song, probably if I say the group, you'll get it right away. It was a song by the Eagles. I don't really know who they were, but I just know the song, all right? Steve is my go-to guy for I was listening to classical music, if you can believe that, when I was in high school and college and wasn't listening. So he's the one who's singing that, and he knows right away who it was. But the song by the Eagles was time keeps on slipping into the future. You know, I remember, you know, if you listen to, what is it, 92.4, something like that, they play all the oldies. So I'm catching up on the music from the 60s and 70s. But anyway, the song says, time keeps on slipping into the future. And that's what it almost, is it already coming up to December? You know, it's just like time keeps moving forward. And it's like we didn't really have enough time to relish the moment, if you will. But it was interesting, as the chorus goes, I want to fly like an eagle to the sea, fly like an eagle, let my spirit carry me. I want to fly like an eagle till I'm free, oh Lord, through the revolution. Now, I'm not quite sure exactly what the reference is there, but this song is suggesting, as Isaiah is suggesting, that the future is the moment when time will be fulfilled, if you will. It could be our death. It could be the ending of something in our lives. It could be the great cataclysmic, cosmic ending of time. One thing that I found interesting, and I don't ever remember hearing what the verse is, but it's interesting that after saying time keeps on slipping into the future, I want to fly like an eagle. This is the verse. I don't know if anybody remembers it. Feed the babies who don't have enough to eat. Shoe the children with no shoes on their feet. House the people living on the street. Oh, there's the solution. Now, I don't exactly remember the date of this song, probably in the late 60s, early 70s, if that's somewhere around. I mean, that's pretty prophetic. That there's an idea, you know, feed the children, put shoes on their feet, you know, build houses for people. Wow, imagine. so that what's happening with these scriptures is that it's pushing us to consider a look back to the past. That's where the prophet is speaking, but the prophet is speaking about the future. Now I'm going to get confused myself on how to figure this out, but the prophet is speaking about the future, but the suggestion is something in the present. So that even in Matthew's gospel that we're going to begin to read now through this whole of this next year, that remember that the cataclysm that came in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple, that Matthew's gospel is actually written after that time. So Jerusalem has already been destroyed, but yet in Jesus's words, it's like, well, this is going to come. So it's kind of this weird, it's like the slinky, right? It's going around, but we're already ahead, but it looks like we're passing the moment or maybe the past. You see, it can get confusing in regards to time. Over Thanksgiving, we had family friends over, and one of them is a teacher at a local charter school, and I don't even remember how we got talking about it, and she told us, and it was just shocking to me, that one of the teachers at this school is a flat earther. And I thought, a flat earther? First of all, what is this person doing teaching in the school? And she said, oh, he can only teach Latin. He can't teach any other subject because of that particular view. And I thought, you remember, you all remember, right? Apollo 8 and that first view back at Christmas, from the moon as they began to circle the moon, and there was the earth. It's like, that should have been proof enough for the flat earthers, that the earth is not flat. Even just like, a couple of weeks ago now, when the current attempt to go around the moon and eventually land on the moon, going around the moon took a picture back, and there was a round disc. How can you still hold on to the past, thinking it's flat earth? And supposedly what he says is, well, if you look out across the parking lot, it looks flat. Well, yeah, of course. You have to get far enough out, go to the ocean and see what happens. Where do you think the sun is going? Oh, it's just going off the cliff, right? Off the end. I tell that because in the consideration of time, there are people who actually absolutely are resisted to this idea that time is progressing towards the future. They want to hold on to the present. One, because it's familiar. Two, it's probably easier to deal with than trying to figure out the uncertainties of the future. It's like one of the ads during the campaign. It says, we built a life for ourselves. We got the American dream, and over the picture is all of these hundreds and hundreds of refugees coming to the border. And the suggestion is that this life that we're comfortable with, and this American dream that we believe that we've achieved, is now being threatened by the influx of refugees, that our comfortable, easy, convenient life is being threatened. So we just want to hold on to the way things are and not ever think about it changing. Now, I don't know about you, but there are lots of people, right? The lawyers, Jim and Pete, they're called in terms of the Constitution originalists. If you heard that term? Originalists are people who say the Constitution is exactly how it's written and therefore can't be interpreted beyond what the words are. And so if the Constitution never said, well, then you can't do it and you can't hold that position. Although built into the Constitution, right, is the whole process by which people realize that they're going to need to add on to the Constitution called the amendment process, right? What are we up to? 19 amendments now onto the Constitution? Because the Constitution never said that women could have the right to vote, or that African Americans could vote, or that gay people could get married. No, it never said that. But gosh, if we're back in the 18th century and the foundation of our country, there were a lot of things. We wouldn't have indoor plumbing, would we? We wouldn't have electricity. There wouldn't be plenty. So if we want to go back to the 18th century, then be willing to give up your dishwashers and your phones, and that's kind of how it is. The time, what people want to hold time from progressing and moving forward, and because it's convenient, it's easy, it's familiar. There's a certainty in this. Because even when Matthew is talking, or Jesus is talking in the Gospel of Matthew, there's a lot of uncertainty in what Matthew is saying, even though people know the story of the destruction of Jerusalem, because they're asking, well, what's to come? What's going to become of us? What is this future that we keep hearing Jesus talk about in terms of the reign of God? What is that? It's an intangible reality that well, in my kind of thinking sometimes, I come from Missouri, and when you come from Missouri, you need proof and evidence of things. And if you don't have proof and evidence of things, then it's not anything you really want to believe in, and therefore it doesn't really exist, right? I want it to be tangible. I want to see it, I want to smell it, I want to touch it, because if you can't do any of that, then it must not exist. You see, that's the funny thing about time, that if it's slipping into the future, well, we really don't know what the future is, right? We can't control the future. No matter how much effort we take to do that, we can't control the future. How many people, when they first read Jules Verne and the Time Machine, right? Wow, that was something that was, wow, this is a future that is going to, by now we all should be flying in cars, right? I mean, right, if you read science fiction, that science fiction portrayed a future that, well, they all said around the year 2000. Wow, well, remember where we were, as 1999 came to an end and 2000 began, we were scared out of our minds, because we thought that Y2K, that the whole world was going to collapse. About 3 months before the end of 1999, some friends had gone to Lourdes, and for those who are Catholic, they went to Lourdes, and of course, one of the things that you do when you go to Lourdes is to pick up some holy water, because you believe that this is going to stave off any kind of problems in your life. So I went over to their house, and they said, well, here's a Christmas gift for Y2K. And I went, oh, what? And I opened the box, and the first thing I saw was this bottle of the Virgin Mary filled with Lourdes water, because they said this will protect you into the year 2. Next to the bottle of Lourdes water was a bottle of whiskey. Well, that's very realistic, isn't it? It's like, well, if the holy water ain't going to do it, the whiskey will make you so blitzed out of your mind that you won't care what 2000 is going to look like. Now, I share all of that because I want you to get a sense that it's like we're repeating something in Advent. One of the resources that I read, she said when she was a little girl and Advent came around, as a little girl, she'd ask Mommy, she said, well, why are we doing this? Well, because Mom would say, because we're preparing for the birth of Jesus. And she said, Jesus is already born. Why are we doing this again? And it seems like that sometimes. Why are we doing this again? Advent, and thinking about preparing for the birth of Jesus. Well, no, we're not preparing for the birth of Jesus. We're preparing to remember his birth, just like every birthday, right? Somewhere along the way at about 70, we want to stop remembering birthdays, but that's besides the point, right? So the invitation is to think not in secular terms, but in sacred terms. Because in sacred time, that this circle is moving forward. And so the norm for sacred time is not static, stay the same, never change, never evolve, but rather the nature and character of sacred time is to always be progressing and moving forward, meaning that the norm is evolving, changing, moving forward. And so what we have here in the first Sunday of Advent, once again, is not a repeat of last year or the year before or 50 years ago or 60 years ago or almost 70 years ago, right? Why isn't it the repeat of last year or the year before or 50? Why isn't it the same?
Because we're not the same people.
We're not the same people. We're different. A lot has happened, hasn't it, in this past year? A lot that we didn't want to happen, a lot that we never imagined would happen, and a lot continues to happen. And so here we are because we're different people, and that's the idea. We've got another opportunity. I used to say, we've got another chance to make it right. Well, if you leave something to chance, then you need to be going over to the casino over there off the 202 and the 10. That's where chance happens. We deal in sacred time, and it's not a matter of chance. It's rather opportunity. That's different, isn't it? When things happen by chance, you roll the dice and hope for the best. When it comes to it being invited to experience another opportunity, it says we have another opportunity to make changes in our life that will open us up more fully to the presence and power of God that is intended to transform and change things. Keep hearing the song on that channel that I listened to. And finally, it dawned on me yesterday when I heard it again. I don't even know who's singing it. Steve may know. It's War. What is it good for? Have you ever heard that song? War, what is it good for? I mean, yeah, what is it good for? It's good for nothing. Back a couple of years ago when we were discussing the possibility of when the state had passed a law saying people now can openly carry guns, that at the church we were saying, no, it's not a place that you carry guns into. It's intended to be a safe place, not a place that I have to be fearful and anxious if somebody has a great big gun on their hip. Remember driving in Central Phoenix one time, and a bicyclist was going down the street in his bike shorts and his tight t-shirt, and there on his hip was this great big huge gun. And I thought, what the heck is that? I mean, that scared the living daylights out of me. And we went to, they wanted to play it right, and we went to the sheriff's office down in Sun Lakes. And the sheriff had another chaplain to the sheriff's posse in Sun Lakes come, and we got into this argument because he said, well, we have guns to make us feel safe. And I said, no, I don't feel safe with guns. That's why we're going to have a policy of not having guns into the church. Well, he went on, talking about how, in a sense, this is a Christian thing we should want to have. And I said, no, Isaiah says, you beat your swords into plowshares and your spears into pruning hooks. And he had the nerve to say to me, a biblical scholar, oh no, that's not what that text means.
Yeah.
I said, well, I think it does mean that. Because what's the point of weapons and instruments of violence and destruction? Is that what God intends? So you see, we've got an opportunity not only to speak words of compassion and justice and mercy, but also to call the question on flat earthers if we need to do that. I mean, not in a way that we demean or degrade them, but in a way that says, that's just not the right idea. Because here's the vision. The vision is we've got proof and evidence. We all now are Missourians. We've got proof and evidence. It's a round ball in the universe. It's not flat. It's not a tabletop. We got evidence. So I'm inviting you to to not think that your ideas are bad, but I'm inviting you to kind of just be open a little bit more to reality that can change how you think about not just the earth, but everything else about the earth. You see, that's what Isaiah is doing. Let's consider a time, not so much in the future as if it will never happen, but a time that, yes, there won't be a purpose for war. There won't be a purpose for homelessness and hunger and all the things that we see around us. Because why? Because we've solved the problems. We've at least attempted to solve them. I keep seeing story about the fire down, if you saw it, down along the road down along Jefferson Street, down by the state capitol. And there was another fire in one of the tents down there. And yet, within seconds, I saw an ad on Facebook that said, here is a small home, a mini home, one of these mini homes that would take you about 2 hours to put up. And I thought, maybe we need to get these people together. You know, it's like that home, by the way, that home was on Amazon. Imagine that. It was like meant to be for your grandmother out back of your house. You could put this up in 2 hours and put grandma out there. Well, instead of putting grandma out there, why don't we put some of the homeless in one of those homes? There's enough vacant property around. I'm just giving you some ideas, you see, where the future becomes the present. And so how do we get to a future like that? By beginning now in the present. And that's the opportunity of that, is to begin to think of things shaped by a future, but we act on them in the present. That's our opportunity this Advent, to take the time to make the effort to open ourselves to the power of God that transforms our hearts, that will begin to transform the world because we act on that vision of the reign of God and the future.